people of the Yuin River and the Lilaquani people of far south. We recognise their continued connection to land, water and culture. We recognise that we have a lot to learn from the Aboriginal people today, who represent the world's oldest continuing culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. So in attendance tonight we have Councillor Deputy Mayor Thorpe, we have Councillor Gibson, we have Councillor Armstrong, we have Councillor O'Neill, we have Councillor Jessup, we have Councillor Canberra-Smith, we have Councillor Temby and Councillor Burgess. And I'll hand over to the Director of Governance Strategy and Sustainable Development Services.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, for staff, we have Director People and Corporate Services, David Spinks, Director Infrastructure, Climate and Environmental Services, Lockie Crans, Acting Director Community Wellbeing Services, Lyle Ground, Media and Communications Coordinator, Kelly Davis, and Executive Assistant, Sandy Rustle.
Thank you. Okay, 2.1, apologies, we have none. 2.2, leave of absence. And 2.3, absent. Nil. 3, declaration of interest. Councillors, is there any items on the agenda that you need to declare an interest? No. Thank you. We're up to confirmation of minutes. It is 4.003/23. Do I have a councillor to move the minutes that the minutes are confirmed for the ordinary meeting of Wednesday, 22nd of February 2023? Do I have a mover? Yes, Councillor Thorpe, and a seconder, Councillor Jessup. Does any councillor wish to report any changes? Or
I just have a question of clarification that the voting record where abstained on item 5.010-23 is recorded in the minutes as a no vote, just to clarify that that's adequately recorded, if that's okay.
Yes, Councillor, that is correct. Pursuant to Regulation 28, the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2015, to abstain from voting at a meeting is to vote in the negative.
okay, do I have any other? No? Well, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. 5, legislative items 5.001/23. Director, are there any legislative items? Urgent matters 6.002/23. Do I have any urgent matters?
Yes, Mayor, I bring forward the matter of tender TN 172, Dover Medical Centre expansion in accordance with Regulation 8.6 of Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2015. It's reported from the General Manager that the matter was not included on the agenda for the meeting as direct negotiations culminated on 24 March 2023 with a review of the documents taking 2 subsequent days. The matter is urgent as the directed negotiator preferred contract proposal and associated project delivery timeframe submission require timely feedback to the contractor for them to be able to commit to their project proposal. This feedback deadline is before the date of the next council meeting. There was a recommendation.
Yes, so do I have a councillor to move the recommendation that the urgent matter be received and included in tonight's agenda? Councillor Canberra-Smith and seconded by Councillor Gibson. So I will put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors and the motion is carried. There is nil for Mayor's announcements. Public participation. 8.1, public question time. The answers to previous questions taken on notice have been responded to and can be found on the website and will be included in the minutes. 8.1.2, questions on notice, the same. They have been answered on the website and included in the minutes. 8.1.3, questions without notice. There was 2 questions via email, and as previously mentioned, the questions provided on notice and the response can be found on the website and will be included in the minutes. Okay, from the gallery. Welcome to public question time. If you have a question, as the chair, I will ask you to come forward to the microphone and identify yourself by name and area where you live. To make things fair and equitable, we have a limit of 2 questions per person. We normally allocate 15 minutes, depending on what's the questions at the time. All questions must be directed to me as the chairperson, and I will either answer or pass on to the director. Debate will not be entered into. The council cannot make decisions on issues that arise in public question time. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and ask a question? Yes, Caleb.
Caleb Elcock from Dover, through you, Mayor. I've got 2 questions, if I may.
Yeah.
So the first question is, I noticed that there are another 4 representations, 3 that seem to be private individual landowners that are tabled for the TPC's consideration. I'm sure the representatives are grateful for them being considered, and I'm in the same vein, it has come to my attention that a number of the public believe that they did in fact make representation in regards to the LPS transition, with at least one allegedly receiving written advice by council that their land would be zoned according to what the representative had requested by email. However, none of these properties or community members appear in the endorsed 35F document. My question to council is, what advice would there be for these people for their next steps?
Okay, thank you very much, Caleb. Can I pass that through to you, Director?
Through you, Mayor, I'm not quite sure of the circumstances that you're referring to, but the matter is currently in the hands of the Tasmanian Planning Commission, so I'd be suggesting that they contact the Commission as to what opportunities they have to appear. Council was certainly directed to notify some property owners in relation to change in zones, but we certainly weren't given any directions as to how we are supposed to deal with them.
Okay, cool. So contact TPC, right.
Okay. Do you want to just wait and see how we go? Or is it second question part of that one? Yep.
It's not, well, it's related to the
Okay, off you go.
hearing stuff, but I can sit.
Yep, no, you're right. Thanks, go Caleb.
So the second question is, gearing up for the impending TPC hearings, several representatives have expressed varying levels of concern, distress around public speaking, having sound arguments, etc. What level of support could council provide to these people? For example, petition the state for perhaps a duty comms officer to assist in structuring arguments, or making available a consultation room for volunteers to assist.
Okay, thank you very much, Caleb. Can I pass that one through to you, Director?
Yes, through you, Mayor. Council certainly has no plans or resources available to provide that support.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Pat.
Through you, Mayor, to the Director. I note that 3 employment opportunities are currently advertised on the Huon Valley Council website, or at least yesterday. How many positions are currently vacant? How many positions have been advertised over the last 3 months, and where were they advertised? And how many positions were filled? And how many direct appointments were made in that time that were not advertised? I realise that's rather a lot to take on just like that.
Thank you. I'll pass that through to the Director.
Through you, Mayor, I think it's probably best that I take that one on notice. Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Dr. Smith?
Liz Smith, Signet. I have two questions that are completely unrelated, so I'll do the first one first.
Yeah.
In January, I asked about the 2019 Huonville-Ranelagh Master Plan and the Transport Management Plan, which was to be prioritised and has not been undertaken, and about Council's role in the Huon Link Road project and whether Council was making a financial contribution. The answers were that the Council has not formally considered the Huon Link Road at a Council meeting, is not making any financial contribution. The Huon Link Road is a state growth project, and the Council is a stakeholder and will need to consider any development application as a planning authority. In the General Manager's operational report for today's meeting, it is reported that a master plan for the Huon Link Road is being progressed by the Council. So my question is the master plan for the Huon Link Road based on the 2019 Huonville-Ranelagh Master Plan, or is it a completely new and different plan? And what public engagement will be done in the development of the Huon Link Road Master Plan?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smith. Pass that through to, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't believe that master plan is specifically mentioned in the Huonville-Ranelagh Master Plan. It's master planning associated with the residential land that sits alongside the Huon Link Road, so between Huonville Main Street and the Huon Link Road. It's a master plan to ensure that there are opportunities for subdivision connectivity, particularly roadways, walkways and the like, which do not rely upon the Huon Link Road, which is a limited access road. We have no clear direction yet as to what or if any community involvement will be in that master plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall I
Yes, you can ask your
go for the second one?
question. Yes.
In response to my question last month, we were informed that the Council's electric vehicle is available to all staff, has travelled 31,235 kilometre and avoided 7,547 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. It was reported in the Mercury on Monday, March 27th, that Hobart City Council, among other approaches to reducing carbon emissions, the Council has transitioned half its fleet to either hybrids or EVs and is expected to be 100% electric by 2027. So my question is, what plans are in place at Huon Valley Council to transition the fleet to 100% electric, and what time frame is proposed?
Thank you for that, and I'll pass it through to the Director, but I do need to say that availability of vehicles is a bit of a hold-up for us, but I will pass it through.
Thanks for the question, Dr. Smith. We'll consider our position on electric vehicles as we develop the fleet policy, the light vehicle policy, which I think I mentioned in the answer last time. So that's a policy that's due for renewal, looking at the moment. Hobart and city areas are obviously a different landform than us. We do have particular needs for higher clearance and four-wheel drive vehicles, things like that. And they aren't as readily available in the market yet as EVs, but they're certainly coming. I'd be surprised if most councils weren't heavily electrified by 2027, regardless. So we'll develop this as we develop our policy.
Thank you. That's good news.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the gallery? Okay. So, where are we up to? 8.2, deputations. Where, Neil? 9, petitions.
Neil, Mayor.
10, a planning authority. I advise that the council is acting as a planning authority as at Council acting as a planning authority in accordance with the provisions of Part 2 Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulations 2015, the Council will now act as a planning authority pursuant to the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. In accordance with Regulation 25, the Council will act as a planning authority in respect to these matters appearing under item 10 on this agenda, inclusive of any supplementary items. (10.005/23) report under section 35F of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 on representations received by the Planning Authority following exhibition of draft Huon Valley Local Provision Scheduled LPS HUO TPS. I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Camber-Smith. Do I have a seconder? Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Camber-Smith, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, I'm very happy with the conclusions that have been drawn against the 4 representations, and recommend the motion to the council.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone going to speak against the motion? Are there any questions?
I have a question,
Yes.
Mayor. 414, as part of the report, representation 414, seems to be inconsistent because at the end of the Planning Authority comment it says neither A or B apply to this land and therefore the rural zone is the most appropriate zone for the site. And then in the next box, the recommendation is no modification to the draft LPS is required. The draft LPS moves that zone to landscape conservation. So am I misreading something, or should that box say there is a recommended change?
Through you, Mayor, I have had this clarified, and the actual zone under the draft LPS is rural, not landscape conservation. So it would be retaining the zone as rural.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
So, Mayor, I have a second question, and it relates more to the 416. I suppose I'm wondering if I move a modification to this and what the appropriate method would be if I just move that we change the Planning Authority response. I'm not. I suppose my question is, I'm not particularly happy with the repeating of the vegetated hills and valleys frame clearances, because when we did approve the 35F, we really agreed that that hadn't been defined as the scenic value, and we actually made that point at the beginning of the LPS. So I'm happy to either move for a different wording, or I'd also be happy if we just deleted that whole first section out of the Planning Authority response and just had the second. I think we could get into a long debate as if it should be LCZ or not, but I'm assuming it's really, we've had the same model applied to it as we had all the other ones, so from a consistency point of view maybe we should, but I just take umbrage at that first paragraph. I'm okay with the second paragraph, I suppose is what I'm saying.
Okay, so that's, I now have to go back to, so you're moving to put an amendment?
Well, so the motion is that we accept the report. So I'd have to move a motion to append the report. I'd be happy if it just, the second paragraph which starts, the subject site is over 20 hectares, it's steep, contains waterways, etc., and ends by saying accordingly the landscape conservation zone is considered the most appropriate. So I'm not substantively changing the report. It's just that first paragraph does stick in my throat a little bit.
Okay.
Through you, Mayor, the process would be by way of an amendment. And it would be an amendment to the motion by including, I just need to get the right paragraph in there. At the end of paragraph B, where it reads, included in attachment A to this report be endorsed with the following amendment. In representation 416, the first paragraph of Planning Authority response is removed.
And do we have to also move the amendment to the 414 as well?
No, we don't need to move the amendment to 414. That stands as it is.
Okay, all right. So now I'll go back to Councillor Camber-Smith.
No, I don't accept that amendment.
Okay, so then we will then go to the vote.
It's a matter of confirming.
Yep, do we have a seconder for, is that right?
Confirming that Councillor Jessup wishes to move it as an amendment and then call the second.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move the amendment that the first paragraph in the Planning Authority on representation 416 be removed.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion? All right.
Through you, Mayor,
Yep.
as a seconder to the motion.
Oh, you can't second the second one. Okay. Yeah, Councillor Thorpe, you'd like to second that? Okay, so we go to the you. Yeah, you'd like to have an opening on your amendment?
I will try to be brief. I don't want to debate the where this zone moves to, although I have an opinion that it probably is wrongly rezoned, but the Planning Commission will sort that out. However, the major issue is that the initial paragraph is, I think, inconsistent to where we are in terms of the scenic value appreciation that we're currently doing. I don't think we need to keep repeating what was effectively a consultant's paragraph, a stock standard paragraph. I think the second paragraph about that is more factual about what the block is sufficient for the conclusion. So move that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have anyone to speak against that amended motion? Any questions? Yep.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. This may just seem like a really stupid question, but does Mark changing that and Jenny keeping it really change the outcome of the application? If we're just simply changing the wording, is the outcome the same regardless?
I'll go through to the Director.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, it's the first paragraph has some relevance to visual characteristics and application of the landscape conservation zone, so there is a slight change.
Okay, do I have any other questions? Okay. As there's no councillors speak against the motion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Amended motion, please raise your hand. Have you got that, Sandy? No, I'll read them out. It's Doyle, Thorpe, Armstrong, Jessup, Burgess and O'Neill. And against is Councillor Temby, Camber-Smith and Gibson. So the motion is carried. Is that correct? The amendment? So now we go back to the original? No. Yeah, okay. Yep. So that's finished then. No?
You have further debate
On the
motion as amended.
Okay. So, yeah, okay. So I go back to,
You have the motion as amended, so it is just continuing debate or
Oh, okay.
discussion on that.
on that, okay. Right. No? No, there's none. So we can vote, do we vote again? So all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's Doyle, Thorpe, Armstrong. That's all councillors. Thank you. Agenda item 10.006/23, planning application DA 276/2021, alterations and additions to existing childcare at 100A, 100B, Vosses Road, Yountville, CT 131293-1. I refer councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith, and a seconder? Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Camber-Smith, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
I start by saying that I feel very sorry for the applicant. They've obviously put in a huge amount of work, time. It's on work, time, and money into this application. However, leaving that aside, my assessment of this is that the officers have made the correct decision here, in that I think the traffic assessment is flawed. Voss Road is very narrow, very windy. The traffic going to and from the childcare centre is concentrated at certain times. I know residents that are very concerned about even walking down that road themselves to the bus stop. I don't think the turning out onto the Huon Highway has been properly considered. And I think sitting outside the cottage wasn't representative either, because a lot of people park elsewhere and walk there because of that small car park. And I know this particular childcare centre is allowed owing to it being an existing use from the previous planning scheme. However, what is proposed would appear to be a significant intensification of use, both in terms of traffic and additional hours on a Saturday, etc. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone to speak against the motion? Is there any questions? Oh, you would like to speak, yes? You're speaking against the motion, David? Or no, a question?
Not really, Mayor.
No.
I'm not speaking against or for it. I'm
Yep.
just, I'd like to make a few obvious statements.
Yep.
It's been a large investment on the owners out of their pocket, and I think it's unfortunate that they've got nothing to show for it at this stage. So I think I'll have to vote for this motion, but I think we should consider traffic controls, and if it's possible to have a decrease in staff or building area or parking area, if we can still find a solution for it further down the track. I think we need good childcare, and I think traffic controls could be looked at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other questions? Yes, yes?
Just a comment.
Yes.
And it's been mentioned before, the large investment in this application. I was wondering if I could suggest a standing item of advice be supplied at the first contact with applicants for DAs, that council planners cannot preempt a determination and that due diligence must be done by the applicant to confirm adherence to the planning scheme. And just something to make that very clear, because I think it could save council and applicants a lot of trouble.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? No? Nope. Okay. As there's no one to speak against, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. And the motion is carried. Agenda item 10.007/23, Development Application DA 104-2021 for 62 Kingfisher Beach Road, Southport CT 166032/2 and Associated Planning Appeal 91-21P. I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move a motion, please? Councillor Burgess, a seconder. Councillor Gibson. Councillor Burgess, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Is there any councillor speak against the motion? Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Gibson.
I did have a question. The original refusal for this, I seem to remember it was mentioned that, if I've got the right one, that it was it was on a ridge or a skyline. I was finding it hard to read from the relocation whether or not that had been resolved.
I'll pass that through to the director.
Through you, Mayor, that's something that needs to be discussed in close just with the substantive item.
Ah, yes. Thank you.
Councillor Camber-Smith.
Thank you. Just looking at the area to be...
It's that same deal. It's enclosed. It's
Oh.
the recommendation is that the agenda for discussion in closed session. Thank you. Okay, as there was no one to speak against the motion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is... Was that you? Yes, and the motion is carried. Agenda item 10.008/23, report on an application for a minor amendment to sub 24-2011 6139 Channel Highway, Gardners Creek, CT 42990/1. I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Armstrong, a seconder. Councillor Jessup. Councillor Armstrong, do you wish to speak to the motion? Is there anyone to speak against the motion? Is there any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Looking at this subdivision, I'm not sure it's a subdivision that we would necessarily be keen to approve, given where it is and the lack of amenity and so forth. But my understanding, and this is a point of clarification, that it looks like this was done in, about 10, 12 years ago, so we really have no ability to change it apart from jiggle around the edges a bit. Is that right, Mayor? Thank you.
Through you to you, Director.
Through you, Mayor, that is correct. Certainly I know I've had discussions with some councillors, at least one councillor, in relation to some of these historic subdivisions, that they achieve substantial commencement and then there's a big gap between that and actually activating the subdivision, and there have been circumstances do change. It's just something that we can't deal with under LUPA, so we've got to accept it.
Is there any other? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith.
Thank you. Just to sort of clarify that. So, what are the sort of timescales involved if somebody does something to sort of start it but then does nothing for years? Is there a time cut-off, or can we impose a time cut-off for which they have to do something, or is that set down in statute?
Okay, through to you, Director.
Through you, Mayor, unfortunately, and I say that because it does become difficult when you've got something which comes back to you 10 years later. Under the Land Use Planning Approvals Act, you have 2 years to substantially commence. You may have 2 further extensions of that time. Once you have and demonstrate the time that you have substantially commenced, then the permit remains live until completed.
Wow. Goodness.
Yes, Councillor Temby?
Thank you. And does that include the side friction that that number of properties, residents on that number of properties are going to flow into Lowe's Road? Can you do anything about requiring, surely over that period of time, you would think that there would be changes to requirements as to whether or not you can allow that number of people to actually flow onto the road and the impacts on traffic. So there's still nothing you can do with regards to that?
Through to the Director. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, there is nothing that we can do in relation to refusing or stopping the development in relation to extra traffic. The one issue that does become relevant is that any infrastructure needs to be done in accordance with standards approved by council, so we can actually apply the standards that are currently applicable, which is why we've got some of these amendments.
Okay, do we have any other? No? Okay. As there was no one to speak against, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Okay. I advise that the council is no longer acting as a planning authority at 11 general reports. Are there any councillors want to table their activities tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and I refer the councillors to the recommendation. So we just go straight to the vote on that, don't we? No, don't have to.
Discussion on general reports.
Ah, yes. Yep. So do I have a... so the recommendation is 11.003/23. Do I have a councillor to move a motion that the general reports and minutes for the period of 1 to the 28th of February 2023 be received and noted? Councillor Armstrong, and a seconder, Councillor O'Neill. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Armstrong?
No, Mayor.
Is there anyone to speak against the motion? No? Is there any questions? Yes, Councillor Campbell-Smith.
Sorry, I've got a couple of questions, actually.
No, that's fine.
One was actually the same, funnily enough, as Dr. Smith asked about the master plan for the Hugh and Link Road, but that's been clarified. Thank you. Another one was the motion we passed about engaging with STT. It's been 3 months, and the same thing keeps saying that we've engagement has commenced, but that no formal meeting has been held. I wondered if that was in train, if there's to be a meeting soon. Has a letter been sent?
Trying to get people's diaries together, but yes, we have been trying to do that. Yep.
I've got other. Is it better if other people ask their questions and come back to me, or shall I continue? Or?
No, continue on. It's fine.
There's something about, it mentions a heritage study for the Huon Valley. Is that something that we've been told about or talked about? Is there a budget for it?
Okay, I'll pass that through to the Director.
Through you, Mayor, that's one of the strategic land use planning projects, so it's been funded with that strategic land use funding. So under the interim planning scheme as it currently is, the only opportunity for a local heritage list, which is basically local heritage properties, was to carry over those ones that were in the previous scheme, planning schemes, minus the ones that were on the Tasmanian Heritage Register. So the process for the heritage study is to prepare a list of local heritage places which would then be incorporated into the planning scheme.
Okay, thank you. So it's funded under the money that we've got set aside for the land use planning work?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And yeah, climate change, will Council or Legat or STCA, will we make a submission to the Tasmanian draft climate change strategy? That's submissions have to be in by the 6th of April, given our...
Okay. Okay, thank you. Through the director to... to the director.
Councillor Campbell-Smith, sorry, can you repeat the question? I was...
Sorry, there's a Tasmanian draft climate change strategy out at the moment for consultation, and I wondered if Council was planning to put in a submission to that, if we've seen it, if we have any concerns about it, or if we want to, press for more funding to come to councils to for adaptation, etc. Ought we to be submitting something?
Yep, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, yes, Councillor Gibbs.
Through you, Mayor. I also had a question around the Heritage Register and just wondered whether Aboriginal heritage would be included, just remembering the approval of the Wilson's boat shed and some issues with a midden in that area, and just making sure that that's being done as part of that.
Thank you.
Mayor, Aboriginal heritage sits outside of the local historic places. It sits under its own act. So Council doesn't have access to the expertise in relation to local Aboriginal historical areas.
So does that mean that they just don't end up being on a register, or...?
They're not on a register that is administered by the Council on a planning scheme. They are on the register which is administered by... I can't think of the name for the body who administers it in historic Aboriginal relics. That register is also something which isn't made public, and it's certainly something which wouldn't be made public within our planning scheme.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. I might actually fill in a declaration of interest form now, because my property is one of the few properties in Huon Valley that does have a Huon Valley Heritage Place overlay on it. And that's actually going to the LPS, so it's in train. These new ones, will we have to go back to the Planning Authority to put a overlay over those properties?
Okay, through to you.
Through you, Mayor, yes. So we would do the study. Then there will need to be a process of engagement with the property owners. I know some other councils have just put a list up without the property owners being engaged. We'd certainly engage with the property owners, then we would be putting it forward as an amendment to the LPS.
Okay. So I have a second question.
Yes, you may.
Mayor, Councillor Thorpe's climate change emergency motion, which I stole on the 25th of the 1st, 2023, which was in the report as 13.00123. Point E of that states that the Council agrees to take into consideration the impacts of climate change in all current and forthcoming strategies, policies and work plans. So I'm just wondering, in our future papers where we have our human resource implications and our blah 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 implications, if we should be adding a subheading in there for climate implications. Now, sometimes it may just be none considered, but sometimes there may be some. Through you, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Can I take that, unless you want to go?
It's certainly something to take on notice, because Council has directed to do it. It probably sits more in the risk implications section of the report.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? No? Okay. So there's no one to speak against the motion. I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Councillor workshops. Director, would you like to advise on any of the workshops that were held?
As provided in the agenda, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll read through them for the purpose of the meeting. There have been a number of workshops that have been held prior to this meeting. On 15 February, a workshop was held on the Port Huon Sports Centre. Further to two reports regarding aquatic facilities presented at January's council meeting. The Acting Director Community Wellbeing provided additional information to councillors and led a discussion as to potential modelling and options. There was a session on finance education. Director People and Corporate Services and Acting Manager Finance Services provided explanation of various financial matters to assist councillors in the discharge of their responsibilities. Topics covered included the underlying operating result, operating versus capital expenditure, why capital investment is important, depreciation, interpretation of monthly finance reports and audit panel. On 20 February, the subject was engagement IAP2 and communications. Coordinator Communications and Media led a discussion regarding the communications unit, providing an overview, 12-month plan and our community engagement framework. On 27th February, there were site visits to various council assets and buildings in Huonville. On 1st of March, and subject community vision, the project manager, strategic land use planning, engagement officer and consultants provided a presentation on the overview of the community vision. Discussion topics included breakdown of participation, reach and general themes. And just for the opportunity, Mayor, the draft community vision is out on our Have Your Say page at the moment. Also on that day, draft budget and fees and charges were discussed. The Acting Manager Finance led a discussion regarding the first cut of the fees and charges for the next financial year. This was an opportunity for councillors' input and the ability to discuss and ask questions as to development and progress. On 8th of March, there was an overview of childcare and retirement homes. Acting Director Community Wellbeing Services answered questions regarding a briefing paper distributed showing the current status quo and challenges being experienced. There was a presentation on organic waste collection and processing, phase 2. Acting Manager Environment Services, Waste Management Coordinator and Consultant provided a presentation regarding phase 2. This provided an opportunity for councillor inputs and to discuss and ask questions as to its development and progress. On 15 March, Medical Services Strategy, Acting Director Community Wellbeing gave an overview of a briefing paper. This provided an opportunity for councillors' input and ask questions as to its progress. Assets Renewal and New, Director Infrastructure Services, I think there should be Infrastructure, Climate and Environmental Services, provided a presentation regarding Council's new and renewal asset program. Councillors were asked for their input and questions. Director People and Corporate Services led a discussion regarding the progress and development of the financial year 23-24 budget. 20 March, there were site visits to various council assets and buildings in Dover, Geeston and Port Huon.
Thank you. 13, councillor questions. 13.1, councillors' questions taken on notice. There was nil. 13.2, is there any questions without notice? Yes, Councillor Temby.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Recently I went down to Dover and noticed that Narrows Road has had quite a bit of work done on it, and I was just wondering through you, Mayor, what roadworks has been conducted on Narrows Road, Dover, over the last financial year, and what has been the cost?
Okay, through to you, Director, to pass through.
Through you, Mayor. The financial year to date, we've spent $15,960, which is 2 maintenance grades in July and November. Approximately $100,000 will be spent on the resheeting of the road this year. Narrows Road general road income is $74,881.
Councillor Campbell-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. In October 22, a response to a question from a resident implied that the Human Synergistics Stroke OCI framework was to be funded from the 150k budgeted for leadership and culture, and that a separate staff survey initiative was being prepared, which would be funded from the 25k budget line item. I understand now that the OCI was the staff survey and was funded from the 25k plus an excess 15k from the leadership and culture budget. So my question is, could councillors please be provided with a copy of the OCI survey form given to staff to complete and a breakdown of expenditure for the entire 175k? And on a related issue, could you please advise the cost and from which budget item the current organisational strategy being completed by consultant Paul Hammond is being funded?
Okay, thank you. Through to you, Director.
Through the Mayor, I'll pass that to the Director of People and Corporate Services.
Through you, Mayor. So I can confirm that those numbers have been read out and the funding sources for those amounts. Look, in relation to supplying a copy of the questionnaire that was undertaken for the survey, that's in electronic form. It was quite extensive. I'd have to go back to our supplier just to make sure that's okay. I can't, at face value, see any problems with supplying that, but I just need to go back to our supplier to double check that. Breakdown of the $175,000, yes, we can certainly provide that, and I will. And in relation to the review that you mentioned, that's being funded out of an allocation in the General Manager's functionary budget, titled Strategic Initiatives, and that has a $50,000 amount in that budget.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other questions without notice? Yes, Councillor Gibson.
It's actually not so much a question, but just a comment. With the workshops, there was also the visit, the 27th of March, visit to the Signet assets that somehow didn't make it on the list. But I'd just on the whole workshop thing, I'd just like to thank the executive leadership team for the fantastic work they've done in making the workshops much more functional by providing early advice and synopsis of what's being done, and I think that's been a big improvement and made workshops more constructive.
Thank you. I reckon the 27th of March would have missed the agenda when we're doing it, so it'll be on the next one. Yep. Okay. We're now on to 13.3, Councillors' Notice of Motion. We have several notice of motions tonight. The first one is Councillor Gibson. Councillor Gibson, are you happy to move the motion as included in the report?
Yes, Mayor.
So, do I have a seconder? Councillor Canberra-Smith. Do you wish, Councillor Gibson, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes. This has been suggested for some time and advocated for mostly by Jan Zapner and myself as well. The banks of the Huon are a really beautiful place. There's lots of potential there for recreation and to do planting for trees and make it a very nice public area. I think that there's a strong demand for that from the Huon Valley. There are people always asking for walking tracks and access to nature, and there's fantastic health and mental health outcomes from that. The taking on of the lease isn't strictly necessary for access, but I think council can take a very strong leadership role here by shifting the perception that the riverbanks are private property to what they actually are of public property. And taking on these leases also allows for land care groups to plant trees, and I have done some rough calculations, which I don't have, but it's actually quite a big area, and we can do some good climate change mitigation through growing trees over the long term. As far as the taking on a bit of risk for the public, I think actually that's a good role for council to take, so that people are covered in some way, walking in there as council covers people on footpaths and other parks. So I think that's definitely another positive of taking on these 3 leases. And I think that's yeah. I think it'll be always an informal area because of the nature of the area. It's a flood area, so it's not the sort of area where you're going to spend a lot of money on infrastructure and complicated bridges and tracks because it's inappropriate. But simple walking tracks using local material that's just there, are economical. They provide the necessary infrastructure, and they can't be damaged by flood. There's also an added advantage, I think, in planting those areas out because they slow river water down and will decrease flash flooding issues in Huonville.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone to speak against the motion? Yeah, no, but you have a question? Two?
I'm sort of half and half, if I may.
Okay.
I do commend the motion as a health and wellness opportunity for people. I've got a couple of concerns, and I take the Commandy River, which I border on. For example, the council has built a great walking track, which cost quite a bit of dough. But my property, for example, the title actually goes right down to the river in a number of places, and so I'm not sure how we deal with that because we may have to cross over private land. So that's more a procedural question. Yeah, I'll come back to that. So then the other thing was probably I did go to a property about 6 months ago on the Huon that banks right up to it. It's a very steep drop down to the river, but that's not fenced as well. So from a biosecurity point of view, for the farmer that's there, I'm just wondering who's responsible for things like fencing that out, and does that become a council issue? But in principle, I think it's support the idea, but I'm not sure how easy it will be to implement. If that's through you, Mayor. Yep.
Through you, Mayor, back to Councillor Jessup. There is one place where the private property goes to the river, and there's access up to the road at that point and back down the other side, so that would have to be resolved in that way. As to fences and things, look, this has been done different ways. You can put a gate in, you can put a stile over. People who have animals that they want to keep away from any sort of land care sort of activities may need to fence along the bottom of their property. That's really, I guess that's about keeping your animals on your land, which at the moment it's grazing that riverbank, which has some fairly seriously detrimental effects to the river and the riverbank. So it's probably a good idea to pull the animals back away from the river's edge anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, Councillor Temby.
I was just wondering about other areas, like, for example, the area from Ranelagh to Huonville on the north side of the river. There are some spots along there that are already being looked after by land care groups and things like that. Could it be extended onto that as well?
Through you, Mayor. I mean, I see this as a bit of a pilot project. We'll see whether the community steps up to the challenge, because it is a challenge, and, you know, gets involved and makes it happen. But I think it could be extended. Having seen the amount of work that's been done by the people at Franklin Forest, I'm pretty confident that there will be a good take-up and that a lot can be done.
Okay. Yes, Councillor O'Neill.
Yep, just a question. Has there been any consultation with landowners, and what effect or what the cost would be of fencing, and would it be a 50-50 share, or have we sort of spoken to these people and got any feedback from private landowners, and what the effect, if they're not a very viable business, is it going to put them over the edge?
Okay. Thank you. Through.
Look, it's not my position to go and talk to landowners. I think that as I said before, I have spoken to Crown Lands, and this sort of thing has been managed before, as I said, with stiles and gates. I think it would be on a property by property basis, but I guess if that 30 metre strip is the make or break of their property, then they've been sort of using public land that, you know, that doesn't really, they don't really own, and so that may be. I'd be surprised if it's the case, but it may be.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. If you'd asked me this question about wanting to put more walking tracks in 10 years ago, I would have said no, we've got enough. And there are a lot of tracks around that aren't maintained because of that whole historical weeds growing over the top. But we now have this issue where there are very limited open spaces in the Huon. We're getting more built up as we go along. We're getting built out. We're not having roots protect the land like we used to, which is part of the reason we're having flooding, because everything's concrete. You know, there's no natural absorption. So if we could do some, or undo some of the erosion, provide somebody with a safe walk that's going to get them out in the fresh air for an hour, it might help, you know, some people retain their sanity now that we're almost living in the burbs. But the only thing that bothers me is, will this be another pilot project that will get up and going, and then we'll have to take a fern hook with us in 5 years? But, you know, it's a good initiative. Yeah.
I guess we'll see.
Yes. I'll come back to you, Jenny. Yes. Councillor. Through the chair.
Through you, Mayor, I'm quite supportive of this motion, especially around the fact of the positive impact this has on resilience and reactiveness to climate effects with flooding along the river. But I do have a few questions around the current use of that, if there's any strategic use from Parks and Wildlife using this land already, and if there's been any considerations to what council's costs would be if we are to take these lease and have the duty of care to maintain under an agreement after a flooding event, what that looks like and what that expectation is. And also, being a pilot project, if there would be an amendment that we could make that would be 1 year, 2 years, so we could review this instead of being stuck in a legacy project that might not work out. Just my comments.
Okay, over. Do you want to reply to that, Councillor?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Thorpe. I believe that the lease is a year-by-year lease. It at no cost to council, the lease itself. I don't know quite how you can say that council has a responsibility to look after the land, but when it's been sort of not looked after to date, I think the Crown fellow walks along the river sort of every couple of years to see if the blackberries are getting out of control. That's about the extent of the work. But once again, it comes down to the community, and there's nothing to stop council relinquishing the lease if the whole thing is a disaster.
I have one question before I come back to you, Councillor Campbell-Smith. Do we know whether Crown Land are open to letting these leases grow?
Well, it's not letting the leases go, it's just giving council a lease over the land.
Okay.
Very receptive.
And
from what I understand.
And they're managed by Parks at the moment,
yes.
And they don't do anything. Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Campbell-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us. I mean, whenever we're talking to residents, the one thing they're constantly reiterating is the need for more walkways, cycle paths, and people are constantly saying that the river is an underused asset that we don't make enough of. So this is an easy way of doing that, and I sort of imagine it will be embraced by the community. I can see there'll be some pushback from people who live along the river, because there's that sort of proprietorial sense they have of having that sort of bank. But I think over time people will accept that there's a, there is a community benefit in having that open along there, and and you might be getting landholders actually involved in planting and how that's used along there. And there's clearly a move now to get livestock out of rivers and creeks, just for water quality and erosion and all sorts of similar reasons. And there are grants available for fencing from people like Greening Australia, etc., that would enable people to do that.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other? Yes, Councillor Thorpe?
I'd just like to, through you, Mayor, see if we are able to add a time frame on for review, so maybe 2 years to review this. If there is great community uptake, which I hope there is, because it's a positive motion, to then extend that, but also not to set an expectation that this becomes a long-term project unless there is a demonstrated community bond and desire over a period of us actually having this lease. So I'm not sure if that's through the mover and seconder.
We do need an amendment for that.
Okay.
So
the mover can't accept that?
Through you, Mayor, just for the purpose of dealing with notices of motion, the movers move the motion.
So yeah, I'd like to make that just an amended motion to say that a 2-year pilot timeline be added on the end for review in 2 years' time.
do we have a seconder?
Point of order, Mayor. Could that be done maybe as a subsequent motion?
Through you, Mayor, it can. Probably more appropriate to deal with it all at once.
Do we have a seconder? You'll second that? Okay. All right, so we go through that process. Do you want to speak to your...
Yeah, it's nothing of big concern. I think it's appropriate that we do put a timeline on that. I think we have a bit of a risk at maintaining legacy projects that become a burden to council officers, and I just want to mitigate that if this turns out, which hopefully it doesn't. I hope that the community really do uptake on this project, but just to be able to respond to that in 2 years' time to decide whether it's a continued lease agreement or not.
Okay. Is there any councillor to speak against the amended motion? Yes?
I'd like to, I actually support a review, but I think 2 years is very short, and I was going to ask the mover and seconder if a 5-year review might be more appropriate, given that there's planting, and it also takes a little bit of time to get community on board with these sorts of things. So I think 2 years is a very short time frame. Just a suggestion.
Do you accept?
Yeah, I'm happy with 5 years as well. That's fine.
Okay, so... Yep. So can we have the exact wording for your amendment, please?
That this pilot lease agreement be considered for a 5-year period with review from council at the end of a 5-year term. I'm sure that works out.
All right. Do we have anyone else? Yes, Councillor O'Neill.
Sorry, folks. Look, just a comment. I do support the idea of what we're trying to achieve, but I do have issues that we haven't talked to landowners, and I've got no idea what you're talking about, what the conditions are, or the lay of the land, or what the farms are like. I've got no idea. Someone's got 100 metres of foreshore to fence, or 100 miles. I've got no idea. So I just think it's not great to just force things onto people without discussing it, and I'm sure most of them will be supportive, but I don't know that at the moment, so I have issues with that.
I think you make a good point, Councillor O'Neill, and maybe we should put another point on the motion to to do some discussions with landowners as a part of the, if the Crown does actually grant us the leases, that at that point we
Through, you know, like, who do you think would do that?
Yes, that's a good question. Well, I'm happy to.
Okay, let me pass that through to the director. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is we don't have anyone who's with some discretionary ability to go and do this. Doesn't mean it's not a good idea. We just, you know, it's a new project. We don't have resources that can just be deployed to do it. So that will obviously impact your ambition, timing. Do it in the new financial year and make an allocation for it. But right now, there's no one we can just mobilise to go and do that. And consultation, we know, is an exhaustive process if it's done right.
Do you think that it's worthy of further discussion amongst us all?
I would prefer to put the get the leases in place and resolve that part as a separate thing. I just think that that's the right order to do things. We may or may not get the leases, but maybe we should say that if we get the leases, then we'll come back to talk again about how to do public. I think it is important that it's done well.
Yes, yeah, I've got no idea. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Hammersmith.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, I was just going to say very similar that we don't have to consult in order to take out a lease because that land's already Crown land now. So just by taking out a lease, we don't. There's no cost or expenditure or activity really associated with that, and then it's a matter of you know, sitting down if we need to talk further about how we activate that area.
Yes, Councillor.
And it may be, because it's quite a long length, it may be that we can engage some landholders quite early who really want to participate.
Yep.
And the ones who are more resistant, they could come along at a later date once they see that it actually works.
Or not.
Or not.
Okay.
Through you, Mayor, just before there's just further discussion on the amendment, there has been discussion in relation to fencing. I don't think the answer is as clear as council won't be required to contribute towards fencing. Whilst there are exemptions under the Boundary Fences Act for Crown reserves and the like, the Crown would certainly be putting responsibility on the council through any lease to be responsible for contributions towards boundary fences. So that is just a consideration that council will need to, because I don't believe that you should go forward thinking that it's not going to cost anything for fencing.
Okay. So, yes, Councillor Burgess.
If I could, Mayor, I assume we're still asking questions about the original motion.
Well, no, because we're talking on the...
Discussion on the amendment.
Yeah, on the amendment.
I've got nothing to say.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Okay, so no other discussion, so I'll put the amended motion forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's Councillor Thorpe, Armstrong, Jessup, Temby, Burgess, Hammersmith and Gibson. And against, because I'm just a bit wary, is, and he's abstaining. But same deal. it's a no vote. Yeah. Yeah. All right, now we have to vote on the
amendment becomes a motion.
The amendment becomes a...
Continue your discussion on the motion.
Yep. No further discussion? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I too share some reservations around cost, and if we take the lease, parks may impose some maintenance requirement, irrespective of if they do any maintenance or not. They may impose maintenance. I would have rather this be a motion to investigate this and bring it back to the council. So even if this motion is unsuccessful, well, if this motion is unsuccessful, we would then need an absolute majority to bring it back. So that would be a concern, because I'd hate the motion to be lost just on the basis of it being uncertain. Do I dare do another amendment? Can you amend an amendment to the amendment?
Through you, Mayor, you have a motion currently which has been subject to one amendment. You may allow a second amendment to be called on that motion.
Which I wouldn't be able to move because I'm the seconder, but I wonder if an amendment would be that council investigates the application and taking up of the Crown leases, and then we come back and have a better discussion knowing some of the costs. And yes, I acknowledge that would require probably somebody in the NRM team to do a bit of work, but Councillor Gibson, I'm sure, would help them out.
Okay, so as he can't move that, yes.
Can I ask a question now, Mayor, on the motion?
No, we haven't. He's.
I'm pretty out there,
So, Councillor Jessup can't move that motion because he seconded the other motion. Amendment to the amendment, is that correct? So, if there's no other councillor to move that amendment to the amendment, it's not.
So, your suggestion is that it becomes an investigation, or a council investigates applying for and takes up Crown leases.
Speak to your microphone, please, Toby.
Sorry.
That would be an outstanding amendment.
I'm happy with that as well.
Okay, can I have the exact wording for that, please?
That council investigates applying for and taking up Crown leases for public use. Rest of the text as per the original motion and the amended ending with the timeline.
Are you right with that?
I accept that, Mayor, thank you.
Is there a seconder to? Do we have to do that, or no? He's already accepted.
Point of order. Would that not be a completely new motion? That doesn't sound like an amendment. It sounds like a foreshadow.
Through you, Mayor, it's not a direct negative.
So no. Okay, so we now want to speak to that amendment to the amendment. Yeah, Councillor Burgess.
Yes, as the conversation's gone on, doubts have come to my mind as well. Do we know? There's lots of things we don't know. Do we know is any of that Crown land under lease to any of the landholders that have got adjacent blocks? I think what we've done, we've discovered that there's a little bit more to be known about it, so I'll back Toby's latest amendment.
Okay, do we have any other? Yes, Councillor Gibson.
I'd like to speak against that.
Okay.
The Crown will soon let us know if there's any other leases over it, so that would be, from my understanding, I don't think there is. I also think that if you sort of slow the whole process down, then you might get a whole lot of landholders running around trying to take out leases over those bits of Crown land, and we want to preempt that. I think it's good to just take over the leases, and I'm happy to adjust how things happen from there as far as talking to landholders, negotiating about fences, any of those sorts of things. But I think that the first step is important to get into place, and if you mess around with it for too long, it won't happen.
Okay, so to the amendment, to the amended motion? No?
Through
Yep.
you, Mayor, just some clarity. Just as there is discussion against the motion, what would happen is that the motion would be lost and there'd be nothing further before the council. So it would be appropriate that the amendment that was just acceptable to the mover and seconder, that if that was actually moved formally as an amendment. No, it's been put forward as being accepted by
Yes,
mover and seconders.
that's all.
So it would be more appropriate that it was moved formally as a separate amendment because.
Yeah, that's correct.
Through you, Mayor, just a matter of process and just reflecting on the fact that there's some debate and dispute in relation to what has been proposed as an amendment to change it to council investigates applying for as opposed to the council applies for. It would be appropriate that that is moved formally as an amendment to the motion. That way it can be openly discussed by the meeting. If it is passed, it becomes the motion and it's voted upon. If it fails, then you revert back to the motion as it currently is, which is if council applies for the lease. You'll otherwise lose the opportunity to vote on that original motion.
Okay. So we at the amended motion.
Well, it's for Toby. It's for Toby to move it.
Yep.
Councillor
We need a
Thorpe.
mover and a seconder.
Can I say I don't know?
Would someone else like to? Councillor? No?
Through you, Mayor, the regulation provides that at a meeting, a councillor who did not move or second a motion, which is the original motion, may move a motion to amend the original motion.
Yep.
So there is actually the opportunity for the same people to put a second amendment.
Okay. So would you?
So I'll move that amendment.
Okay.
Motion.
And seconded by Councillor Temby.
Oh, no.
Councillor Temby. All right. Do you want to speak to that?
The only thing is that I'm generally supportive of the original motion, but I do appreciate that there are some concerns. So this conversation, I think, has broadened a consensus that we need to look into this a little bit more, make sure we have the best outcome.
Thank you. Okay. So do I have anyone to speak against the amended motion? Councillor, yes, Armstrong?
Through you, Mayor. I'm not sure whether it's against the motion, but I've now got so confused with the motion over the motion. At the very beginning of this, it was just a motion. Nothing was set in stone. It was an exploratory of what might happen down the track if we went and investigated that option. And at the end of the motion, it does say it's about council taking an enabling role without incurring costs for the community to put time and energy into what they want. So I presume that would have covered a lot of what we've just discussed, probably in regard to, you know, enabling community and using those spaces, and Crown land is already Crown land, so therefore it doesn't belong to anybody. So have we just walked around in a big circle and pretty much arrived at the same destination?
But you need to read the motion, not the preamble that came with it.
Yes, I did read the motion.
Yeah.
But yes, that's General Manager's advice, but the motion is pretty much, it's just a motion. It's not something that we've actually decided to do as such. And the motion, clearly along the lines of the riverbed and the walk will be on Crown land a lot anyway, so therefore it wouldn't be encroaching on someone's property as such. And it's not going to cost a lot of money unless there's some involvement with council, which there probably won't be, because that's not going to be structurally productive for maintenance, or there's no financial assistance there either. So the whole discussion of the motion has confused me somewhat because I didn't think we'd set it in stone. I thought it was just a motion.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
And Councillor, you put your hand up as well?
Well, I already spoke against it
Yep.
for the previous reasons, and I just refer the councillors to the General Manager's advice that it's well considered and
Yep.
thing, and as long as the scope is managed and communicated, there will be limited operational costs. So I think that we are making problems where they don't exist.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor?
Sorry, yes, I want to speak against
Oh, okay.
just wanted to speak
Sorry.
against the amendment
Yeah.
as well, because I believe that if we just change it into an investigation, it will never happen, because we'll just have too many other things on our plate and it will never rise to the surface again, or at least not before things have been put in the way and made so we have obstacles. If we just take out, agree to, take out the leases now, we don't have to act on that. We just have to hold those leases, and then we can do whatever we like with it in the future. It's not a cost to us just to take those leases.
Okay, is there any questions? Or, no? Okay. Will I put the motion, the amendment? The motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's Councillor Doyle, Thorpe, Temby and O'Neill. And against is Armstrong, Jessup, Burgess, Cambersmith and Gibson, and the amended motion was put and lost. So we go back to the original, the amended motion. We go back to the, right? Yes, right. So if you could, that's adding the timeline. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor, for the purpose of the meeting,
Yep.
the motion that you'll be considering is that Council applies for and takes up the Crown lease for public use as riverside parks along the Huon River from Southbridge to Judbury on the south side of the Huon River and from Branlar to Judbury on the north side. These are public reserves 3259, 3422 and 3436 managed by Tasmania Parks and Wildlife Service under the Crown Lands Act 1976. The pilot lease agreement be considered for a 5-year period with a review from the Council at the end of the 5-year term.
Okay, so that's back to Councillor Thorpe. Move that? No? Oh, you accepted the... Yeah, okay. Okay, yep. Well, yes, you can.
The only thing that I didn't say much about was the tourism potential of this, and I think that that's not to be underestimated. I think that not in the immediate term, but in the long term, I think it could be a really big draw card for the Huon Valley to have these parks.
Okay. So, I put the... it's just the motion. Yep, I put the motion forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's Councillor Thorpe, Armstrong, Gibbs, Jessup, Temby, Burgess, Cambersmith and Gibson. And against is Doyle, and abstaining is O'Neill. And so the motion is 1. Okay. Yeah. Yes, sorry. Yep, okay. The next motion is from Councillor Temby. Councillor Temby, are you happy to move the motion as included in your report?
I am, Mayor.
Yeah. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Temby's motion? Councillor Burgess? Councillor Temby, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you. This motion is consistent with the Tasmanian Government's Towards Zero Action Plan 2024, which states we are establishing a new grants program to work collaboratively with councils on local roads. Funding will help councils assess and install low-cost safety infrastructure solutions. Ultimately, we must also tackle the issue of safe speeds on our roads. Travel speeds need to be aligned with the inherent safety features of the road. What we know about safe travel speeds and travel mix. Enforcement and public education will play a key role in moderating travel speeds and help us to arrive home safely. This motion is also consistent with the Huon Valley Council Strategic Plan 2015-2025, which states the broad functions of council are to provide for the health, safety and welfare of the community and provide for the peace, order and good government of the municipal area. Our roads are maintained. Our road maintenance has improved dramatically over the last year. However, we have a large number of old, poorly formed roads and a small rate base to pay for maintenance. We are frequently digging out and reconstructing sections of road, but it is a slow and expensive process. Our roads were not designed for the current types of vehicles, the volume of traffic, and the variety of the different road users. There are more houses and driveways, which creates more side friction. Our roads can have kids on bikes, tourists, school buses, aquaculture, agriculture, logging trucks, horses, pedestrians, walking their dogs, pushing their prams, 100-kilometre-an-hour winding road with potholes without shoulders and with poor visibility. Some may say the speed limit is an upper limit and that we should drive to conditions. However, the speed limit provides an indication of the inherent safety features of the road, safe travel speeds and travel mix. That is why, for example, we now have a 40-kilometre-an-hour speed limit outside some schools in our area. We don't just say drive to conditions outside Huonville Primary School. We create rules like wearing a seatbelt for those drivers who do not show responsibility or good judgment. We cannot create a perfect world with no risk. We can mitigate risk, and enforcement of rules can provide an effective deterrent. This project has the potential to investigate many low-cost solutions. It is not just focused on consistent speed limits. We owe it to our community to modernise our approach towards a safe regional road network, which is vital for our safe daily passage during the event of an emergency or for our normal commuter day-to-day activities, transportation, active transportation, visitors, business and industries. And that was 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a councillor to speak against the motion? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith?
Not really against.
Yeah.
I commend the intent of this motion entirely, particularly with respect to the speed limits. I'd just like to propose a couple of amendments, if I may, which Councillor Tenby may or may not accept. In the first paragraph, the last phrase, to achieve a consistent and predictable road environment using low-cost safety infrastructure solutions, I'd prefer to delete that and just put in for all road users. I'm concerned that the consistent and predictable road environment could be read as meaning that, if we've got a pothole or a bit of corrugation, that people are going to say, well, you've not done your job, this is not safe or predictable. And I wanted to, and I'm not sure that low-cost safety infrastructure solutions are necessarily the answer to some of the road issues that we have over the longer term. And just by putting in for all road users instead, I think it recognises that our roads are to be used by non-motorised vehicle people, as people not in cars or trucks, or and it's not sort of. I know that's the intent, but I just wanted to make that sort of clear.
Well, so You'd like to
Table
move
an amendment, yeah, to that
Okay.
effect.
So,
So basically to delete that last phrase after the comma and replace it with for all road users. So it says, so that last bit reads, state government to fund a pilot project for a regional approach to safety across the whole road network within our 2 municipalities for all road users. And then the rest of the...
do you accept those changes, or does it be an amendment? It is an amendment, okay, all right. No, is there a seconder for Councillor Canberra-Smith's amendments? You'll second that? Okay. All right. Do you wish to speak again to that now that it's been seconded?
No, I think I've said all I need to
Okay.
say there, thank you.
All right. Is there any councillor to speak against that amendment? Yes? Okay. Are there any questions? All right, I'll put that to the vote. The amendment, I put the amended motion forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Sorry, is that just
The
amendment, not the motion?
The amendment?
Amendment to the motion.
Yep. Councillor Thorpe, Armstrong, Jessup, Temby, Burgess, Canberra-Smith, O'Neill and Gibson, and Doyle against. Then we have to go back to the, no?
Through you, Mayor, the amendment becomes the motion.
Motion?
So it becomes discussion on that point.
Yes. So, yes, we'd have Councillor O'Neill. Have you got a question or a
Not a
statement?
question, just a comment.
Yep.
Happy to support this motion if it's based on consistency and working with Kingborough and having sort of uniform rules in the road use of the southern Tasmania. But I also feel that there has been overreach already on speeds on roads, and some are too low, and I accept that some are also too high. So I wouldn't like to see it that this is viewed as a motion to lower all speeds on rural roads. And it is a maximum speed. It doesn't mean that you can do that speed around every bad corner or in any condition. I think that's... I know we're calling it zero. We're going for a zero approach to fatalities on roads, and that is just impossible. And there is a risk involved, and I think as a society we do have to accept risk. So that's just a comment. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other? Yes. Oh, yes, Councillor Gibson.
I'd just like to make a comment with personal experience on Cygnet Coast Road. You know, with when there was a 100-kilometre-hour sign, people tried to do it. It was almost impossible. And it's since it settled in at 60, it's sort of consistent all the way from town and around there, and I think that's been really good. So I can see that consistency, and specifically consistencies between Kingborough and Huon would be very beneficial. So I'm in support of the motion.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Through you, Mayor. I just a bit like what Dave said, really. Like I think he made some really good points, and I think it's quite sensible. I'm just a bit concerned that if this, you know, if we do go, yes, it's a great idea, and it is a great idea, does it just go completely over the top? You know, part of the problem with the accidents, I think, in the Huon is because people get frustrated because they're behind people that are doing 50 in a 100 zone where you safely can. I would like to see a safer road network. I'm not sure if this one is the one for us. And, you know, I actually feel like our Huon is quite sensible with its school bus routes and its schools and its safety around children, and You know, it's either slow or it's flashing, buses are stopped or it's flashing. I know we've got potholes and I know that we've got issues with roads, but if we drive slowly, it's not too bad. Windy roads and things described in this, as Kathy points out, are really dangerous to walk on. But would you want to be walking on those roads anyway, because of the sheer demographics of the road? So I know that we can improve. I'm not sure if passing this motion might be the way to do it. I don't know how we control a motion like this. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, yes, I've got something else that I'd like to say as well. It's asking the council to write to the Department of State Growth, but we talk about our roads a lot in your preamble, Councillor Temby. State Growth aren't going to do a pilot on our council roads. I know you probably mean speed limits. Is that what you're referring to? Yes, would you like to add?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, state government is, I think, interested in working collaboratively with the two local councils, as I just read.
Yep.
The towards zero, and it's towards zero, it's an aim, states that the state government are establishing a new grants program. So it's a potential for funding for our regional network, so that we would work collaboratively with the state government and local government between both Kingborough and the Huon Valley. And I have been speaking with the state government about this, and that's why they're very interested in working collaboratively with us and to help fund, and that's where the word low cost infrastructure for safe roads comes in as well, because there's some solutions that are just not speed limits. There are passing lanes, there's other solutions. So, and it's a collaborative role with the police as well. It's with the community, it's about education, it's about enforcement. So it's not just about speeds, and it's not an already packaged up plan as to what we're going to do. It's actually a review. So if you're not happy with the way things are at the moment and you think that maybe they might be too high or too low, then therefore we do need a review. And this is a review which is long overdue, because we've been too long have communities, all different groups, all residents all throughout the Huon Valley, and I've heard it for the last 10 years, where different individual people living in different roads have to apply to the council for a change of speed limit, for example, and then they go to state government and then it gets tossed back and forth, or they go to the trouble of doing a petition, which is very labour intensive for our council staff. This is a review that would have a consistent application, so that you have a predictable road environment that would be good for visitors, it would be good for commuters, it would be safer, and it'd be good for all of us, I think.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Campbell-Smith.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's long overdue. I mean, just in my area, we've been there 20 years, and the traffic's probably tripled in that time, and you've still got the same amount of people walking their kids to the bus stops. There's toddlers on their little bikes. There's people walking dogs. There's no footpath. There's a lot of places there's no verge to go on, and it's becoming an increasing issue when you talk to residents. The whole idea of safety, and there's intersections like the Grove intersection, which are an absolute nightmare, casualty waiting to happen, probably of a school child. So I think it's high time that we did request funds to undertake such a review.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other questions or statements? No? So, would you like to close, Councillor Temby?
I think we've covered everything pretty well, but I appreciate the discussion, and I think that this would be a wonderful thing for our region. So I commend the motion.
Okay, so I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. The next motion is Councillor Armstrong.
Through you, Mayor, I'm not putting my motion, I've withdrawn.
Okay, thank you. The next motion is Councillor Jessup. Councillor Jessup, are you happy to move the motion as included in the report?
Yes, Mayor, I move that motion.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Camber-Smith. Councillor Jessup, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, our people are a considerable asset to the Huon Valley Council, both in terms of the money we pay them in their wages bills, but also by the fact that almost all of our services are delivered by our people. The administration of our people must be based on sound human resources policies and practices. I commend the strategic work being undertaken by the General Manager, which he's outlined quite in detail in his critique of the motion, and his executive team, the future people strategy, the Blue Bus workshops, and the work on the structure are all good stuff and taking up a lot of time of the staff, and I acknowledge that. However, the administration of HR policies are a day-to-day mechanism that administers our people. They recruit, promote, protect and improve people. They are not the strategic work that is being done. The responsible officers in the organisation that we are, the councillors, need to be assured that we have the right policies in place and that they are up to date and are sufficient processes are in place to ensure they are being applied consistently and fairly. This is a duty of care that we have under the Local Government Act and a range of state and federal legislation as well. We also have a duty of care to the people who work here and a responsibility to the people who elected us to oversee this organisation. I'm proposing a very targeted and brief action by councillors to assure us that our HR policies are fit for purpose. I have 3 reasons for this motion. Firstly, on the back of recent issues in the state government, the Director of Local Government has written to councils, I found out recently. I haven't seen that letter, but the General Manager has assured me that the Director has asked all councils to focus on HR policies. And the Minister has gone as far as saying there will be some legislative change coming. I'm not saying that the things that we've read in the paper are happening at this council. In fact, I have no evidence that the gross issues are happening. But as councillors, we must assure ourselves that they are not. It's part of our job. Secondly, councillors have heard, well, we've all heard from the union when they came and asked some questions, and also individual councillors have been told things that we should consider. I accept that you always need to hear HR issues from staff with a grain of salt, but to simply not listen is wrong. As our recent workshop told us, the most dangerous thing in organisations is to not see the blind spot and also to be a bystander in our organisations. We've also seen data that's been an answer from the General Manager that tells us about 25% of our recent permanent positions were appointed without being advertised externally. This does concern me, and I want to be certain that we have very robust safeguards in places for when that does need to happen. And thirdly, there is no mechanism in council to review these policies. They don't come to us. We don't have an internal audit function, and most boards, through their internal audit function, through their audit and risk panel, would regularly have audits of HR policies. That's a pretty standard human resource process. Our audit committee is not yet that sophisticated to undertake those types of studies. In addition to these issues, the Audit Office undertook an audit which did include recruitment and performance, and the performance of the the General Manager performance was measured in the Huon Council. And their comment was, the Huon conducted a performance assessment process that was that was not saying no council conducted a performance assessment process that was consistent with contemporary HR practices. So we have external organisations saying that councils are not contemporary. A few points have been raised in opposition to this motion by over the last week. The first one was it's better to do this in a workshop. I don't agree with that. In workshops we only see what we're given. In this instance I'm suggesting that councillors need to be proactive and ask questions and look. Another criticism is it looks like we're not trusting the staff. Well, again, I absolutely don't agree with that. What I'm suggesting is that we work with the staff. We don't just see that our job is to sit here and pass motions, but that we work with staff to actually have a look at some of these policies.
You need to wind it up, thank you.
Okay. Another argument is we don't have expertise. I totally reject that. And it will take up too much staff time. This is one that I will insist on answering. The General Manager has been telling staff that this will take up an inordinate amount of staff time. This is untrue. Okay, this is a short-term council activity. I've already checked with LGAT. LGAT has draft policies that all we need to do is check our policies against. I'm not asking staff to do this. And in actual fact, I predict it would take up no more than a day of one senior staff member's time. Thank you. I commend the motion.
Okay. Do I have a councillor to speak against the motion? We did, didn't we?
There was a second, wasn't
yeah, we had a second. Yeah, you have to do that before you can speak.
Yes.
No. Yeah. Yes, you can.
Yeah, I have some concerns that, I agree it needs to be done, but at the moment we're told that we've got a people strategy being done at the moment. So can I put this as a question to Councillor Jessup? Do you expect to have your committee put recommendations to the Director for them to produce their people strategy in June?
Would you like to? Yep.
This is a much lower level in the weeds set of questions. So nothing to do with strategic. This is to answer questions like, what is the process for when we decide not to advertise a position? Is there a policy? Who signs it off? What's the procedure? I talked to LGAT today. They said they actually have most of that stuff available for us to compare as a comparator to our own policies. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have any other questions? Comments? Yes, you can.
Yes, through you, Mayor. I think Mark's passion came through fairly well there, but I also think that he's correct. We have to make these things transparent, and we have to think about, all of our staff from the bottom right to the top or the top right to the bottom. And we have been asking questions, and perhaps we haven't been entirely satisfied with responses we've been given. And this would eliminate any dissatisfaction. This would cover all the bases in regard to staff, and it wouldn't be a difficult process to monitor at all. It's quite grassroots, really, isn't it? So, I think perhaps we as a council probably need to get on board with this if we can, please. Thank you.
I would just like to ask a question back to Councillor Jessup on when you spoke about the audit panel, and you said they were not. I'm just wondering whether the audit panel members can answer that question for you. Does anyone from the audit panel want to speak on that?
Yeah, I can make a slight comment that it was discussed at our previous audit panel. It was raised on a few occasions, and the outcome was that if it was an issue that was directed by council, the audit panel investigate, then
Yeah.
that's the response it would be. But I'm happy to be corrected on that by the director that might have been present as well. But that was the sort of justification of that as well, is that it was raised, we had a conversation, but it wasn't on the agenda at that time.
You happy?
Through you, Mayor, the panel agreed that it does not need to get actively involved at this stage, but that it's happy to review policies and provide assurance if questions are raised. The panel is comfortable with what it is saying.
Okay. Yep. Yes, Councillor.
I just want to mention I'm particularly supportive of this motion, especially as effectively a board. Part of our responsibility is to look at risks and things like that. But particularly in response to some media attention, investigation and other HR behaviours, particularly focused on direct appointments in other councils, I think it is entirely appropriate and good for us to take a responsive measure, particularly on this issue, in that, but it's not in any way questioning what we already have established. These policies are within the General Manager's responsibility, but I think as a council it's also our responsibility to react to risks that are being investigated, publicly known through other councils, so we can learn, make sure that we're covered, but also understand that there are incredible challenges around the appointment of people. It's hard to attract people right now. It's hard to retain good talent because there's job opportunities in every organisation. So in terms of that as well, I'm particularly supportive to ensure that we're taking all considerations to make sure that our HR policies are merit-based, effective and fair.
Yes, Councillor.
It's a question really. I wondered
Yeah.
if the same thing could be achieved through a working group as opposed to a committee, and if that would alleviate any concerns staff may have about providing the support to a committee.
Through to you, Director.
Through you, Mayor. Apparently my microphone isn't working properly. Having a council committee does provide extra work because it's a formal committee under the Local Government Act. When the committee meets, we're going to have to advertise the meeting date. It'll be considering in closed committee, but it certainly is advertised. A proper agenda is prepared, minutes are prepared and put forward to the council. So there is greater work involved in a council committee than there is just simply a working group.
So could a working group achieve the intent of this motion and bring forward a recommendation in the same way as a committee and make that easier?
To the extent that I can answer, yes, that the outcome will be the same. There's no decision-making power proposed for this committee. It's just simply a report back to the council meeting.
Yeah. What do you think, Mark?
So would you accept a change, an amendment to that motion?
I think the advantage, I think both will require some level of staff. If you have a working group, I see how much Jess does, for example, for the war working group and stuff. What I'm proposing here should not take a lot of meetings, and I suspect it will be looking at the policies. We'll reach out to some other organisations, get their policies. We may do that informally, have a meeting to sign off what we've done. So if we're having more than a couple of meetings, I'd be thinking we're going off track. The whole point of this, there's no budget, it's very time limited, and it's to come back with a specific answer to 3 or 4 questions. It's not writing policy, it's not doing any of that. If there's conclusions that policies need to be added or changed, that would just go into the council's general work plan. If there were audit risks, that would probably be picked up by the audit panel as a separate issue. But again, I'm not saying that we're going looking for risks, and I'm sure that the audit panel are keeping an eye over inappropriate activities. But certainly ALGAT is giving some very clear messages that there are some work that needs to be done across policies, and I think a committee could. The committee has a slightly higher level of formality, I suppose, which is not bad when we're reviewing formal policies, I think. Similar outcome though.
Yes, Councillor Gibson.
I'm actually would like to speak in favour of the motion, but in case it's lost, I would like to foreshadow an alternative motion to form a working group of this for the same purpose. Yeah, I think that council's success depends on attracting and retaining skilled and motivated employees, and it's critical, you know, that our actions and reputation are fair and equitable treatment of employees. People have talked about merit-based employment, and I think that's, you know, it's very easily diluted if there isn't a really clear suite of policies to govern employment. And the Local Government Act makes it very clear that it's our responsibility to govern, to look after this. And there's a few things that, I mean, I don't profess to know all policies, but I don't know whether we have a gender balance policy in council. I don't know what our policy is around exit interviews and managing those. There's a few things that I just don't know, so I'd be very interested in participating and making sure that we have a really strong suite of policies.
But I do need to remind everyone that they all come back to be voted on at council anyway, as a whole council. Yes? No. Yes? Yeah.
Through you, Mayor, the policies are adopted through the General Manager. There may be a high level consideration for the council.
Okay. Yep. All right. So we had an amendment to the motion? No? No? Okay. All right. Okay. Is there no other questions? You want to close? No? Yep.
Mayor, in fact, where you were was where I started. I actually asked Mr Grimsey when we would see the HR suite of policies, and that's when I found out that we don't get to see those policies. Yeah, deliberately time limited, deliberately focused, and I haven't done a terms of reference because I didn't know if we'd get through, but obviously that's something the first meeting of this committee would deal with. But yeah, what I'm suggesting is we're looking for policies that are missing, policies that are not contemporary, and policies that maybe are not being always implemented or easy to implement, because sometimes policies are just not used because they're too hard. And I'd envisage that we'd be making recommendations going forwards about what needs to be changed, but that would then, as I said, go into the work plan of council as a normal business. It is not strategic, it is very tactical, but it is meeting our responsibility as a board of governance over this organisation. I commend the motion to you, fellow councillors. Thank you.
Okay. As there's no other to speak any more about that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. I'd now like to have a show of hands for who would like to be on that committee, because we'll have to vote on it. Yep. Four.
No, wait on. Sorry, through you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Given that I'm already on the General Manager's recruitment panel, General Manager's performance review, whatever he is.
Yeah.
It's so late, isn't it? It's not,
Yes.
but it is. I wouldn't really be needing to be on this one also, would I?
Well, that's...
No, I don't think so. Well, I just don't want to be saying, like, I need to know everything about everything. Somebody else can have a turn.
All right. So, can I have a show of hands again? Who would like to... Yep, we have three people. So, Do I have to put that to the vote?
Through you, Mayor, no. Nominations were called. Councillors Temby, Jessup and Gibson nominated. 3 councillors, therefore, they are declared elected.
Okay, thank you. The last motion is Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Thorpe, are you happy to move the motion as included in the report?
Yes, Mayor.
Do I have a seconder for Councillor Thorpe's motion? Yes, Councillor Temby. Councillor Thorpe, do you wish to speak to yours?
Yeah, just briefly, Mayor. I've had conversations with both the General Manager and Acting Director of Community Wellbeing with regards to this motion and the Huonville Rec Ground Master Plan 2015. Over the past little while, there have been further discussions and ideas popping around about the future of this particular sport and recreational facility and the need for planning to adapt to the risks of flood-prone areas. And essentially this motion for me falls into the notion of next never stops. This is the next step for updating and formalising further the great work that our council officers have already done and continue to do to undertake and establish plans where we know and can further understand what is best for the community, what is best for our recreational facilities, and so we know what investment is needed to continue to find and allocate to achieve the rollout of larger recreational precinct investment. The aim of this facility, or this recreation ground, obviously has already been established in a master plan, but of the new conversation and this potentially being added date, I think it's a good time to bring this back to the table for community engagement, but also updating to encourage active lifestyles, community sport participation, and recreation areas that work for all demographics of people in our community, like people with a disability or our ageing population. I also want to note that although the land use development strategy and community vision are still to be finalised, I see this as an area as a priority to reevaluate the council's strategies, especially in response to recreational facilities. And with further climate change risks and flood-prone areas, how we respond to that in a master plan. I'm under impression that the Huonville Sporting Precinct Master Plan or Huon Valley Recreational Master Plan has already been enrolled and probably subject to one area of our community that will continue to be developed, but this sets as a precedent to have further conversations about other recreational areas across the municipal area. And this motion is reactive to the state government's State of the State address and commitments through the new State Department Active Tasmania to further adapt, invest and understand priority projects in community sport and recreation. I'd also like to draw attention that the advice from the GM is supportive of this motion. Thanks.
Okay. Do I have a councillor to speak against the motion? Are there any questions for the motion? Yes, Councillor Campbell-Smith.
In light of the fact that the most people get involved in sort of sport and recreation is not actually through organised team sport, but more through sort of walking and cycling, I wondered if Councillor Thorpe might consider, wherever it says sporting precinct, if you might consider changing that to sport and recreation precinct.
I would accept that, Councillor Campbell-Smith.
It's an amendment.
I know. I just think it's really important to recognise, and it's in line as well with the press release that we got from Minister Street earlier this week, and also, he says, I want Tasmanians to know that less formal or structured activities, particularly traditional recreation like walking and riding, are just as legitimate and important as the established sports when it comes to getting active. And I just want that to be recognised in this motion. It's not just about team
So you'd
sport.
like to move an amendment?
Just to
for
replace.
and the wording to change as?
Can I just quickly say something? Because I had similar thoughts, but I was also thinking that we should take into account the existence of the role of rec facilities in the other towns in the assessment. So, like Cygnet and all of them. So I don't know whether that should be worked into one amendment rather than having two to keep the meeting shorter.
Councillor Campbell-Smith.
I'm very happy for that. I mean, that was my initial idea, that we should have a Huon Valley Sport and Recreation, or use this as a pilot for the other precinct, because I know we already have a recreation plan that was developed in 2019, and I don't want us to overlap with that or do something new. But I also know that there's this pot of money that's available, and I think this is partly what Councillor Thorpe's motion was aimed at, was to get on the front foot with the money that's available now through Active Tasmania, and I guess it's whichever's the easiest, the best way of achieving that.
Right, so what would your wording be for your amendment?
Well, my particular concern is to ensure that wherever it says sporting, we replace that with sport and recreation, because Minister Street himself is actually the Minister of Sport and Recreation as well. But I'm happy to consider.
And the wording for that bit would
that
be?
The study takes into account the existence and role of recreation facilities from other towns, or from the whole municipality. Just taking it into account, I think the Councillor Thorpe's Huon Valley, does that? He wants to particularly look at that precinct, and I think that's fine, but I think you do need to look at the rec facilities of the valley as a whole.
Is that a... Okay.
Through you, Mayor, just to clarify, I've got some of that, which would be an amendment to paragraph A, which would be the Huon Valley Council develop a Huonville Sport and Recreation Precinct master plan between the 23 and 24 and 24-25 financial years, and that the study takes into account the existence of
and role of recreation facilities from other towns in the assessment plan. An assessment for the plan. It's not meant to include those in the plan, but it is meant to take into account that they exist.
Okay. So we have a seconder for the amendment. Jenny, we're just talking words here. Okay, we'll read it out. And it was Councillor Campbell-Smith that, yep. It's as long as she's happy with this wording, yep.
So through you, Mayor, the amendment, Councillor Campbell-Smith, that A, the Huon Valley Council develop a Huonville Sport and Recreation Precinct Master Plan between the 23-24, 24-25 financial years, and that the study takes into account the existence and role of recreational facilities of other towns in the assessment for the plan. B would remain the same. C, the first sentence will become the request make note that the Huonville Sport and Recreation Precinct Master Plan, and the rest of the motion would remain the same.
Okay, so the seconder was, no, Councillor O'Neill, yes, initially, yep. All right, so do you wish to speak to your amended motion?
Just briefly, just really to recognise that there are all sorts of different forms of recreation, and that I agree with Councillor Gibson that we probably shouldn't be looking at one precinct in isolation from all the other ones around the, it might be that we say that Huonville is a centre for X, but Cygnet or Franklin might be the centre for another. So, yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Do I have any councillors speak against that motion? Are there any questions on that? Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Thank you, Mayor. I suppose I'm just interested in how this links into the study that was done in 2020, February 2020, which was the Huon Valley Recreation Plan. I'd just encourage Councillor Thorpe to review that document, which does talk about the integration of recreation and recreation grounds. And as chairman of the Ranelagh Recreation Grounds Committee, I must say you can't forget the cricketers at Ranelagh either. So there are many grounds, and I think we we need to work out how we can integrate that and get a package. But yeah, I also acknowledge that the Huon precinct is our master sort of primary area. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, Councillor Gibson.
Just a question about whether that timeline is going to be too restrictive for the staff or whether it's realistic.
Through to you, Director.
Pass that to the Acting Director, Community Wellbeing.
So obviously I was consulted by Toby, by Councillor Thorpe, and for us know that we've always had an intention to go down this pathway, and in terms of timeframes, we were comfortable with those that are prescribed in the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, as I have no other, I will put the amended motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the amended motion was carried. Now we have to go back to the amendment becomes the motion, and we vote on the motion. So, all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Thank you everyone for those motions. Lease of public land, Signet Town Hall. 15.013/23. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Gibson, a seconder. Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Gibson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I'm very comfortable with this motion. I mean, we've got some excellent tenants there, and extending for a year while we talk to the community about what the long term is for the area, I think is a very sensible approach.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Is there any councillor to speak against this motion? Are there any questions or statements for this? No? As there's no councillors speak against the motion, then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Financial report, agenda number 16.005/23. I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Jessup, and a seconder, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Jessup, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Not to the motion, but I will have some questions when we come up to that. Thank you.
All right, okay. Do I have a councillor to speak against the motion? Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd hate Mr Spinks to feel left out. So I have a couple of questions. We're talking about an additional expenditure of $30,000 in respect to the economic development community vision. So I'm just wondering, A, what is the economic development community vision, and what was the extra $30,000 for? And if your memory is good, Mr Spinks, I'll also say the increased revenue of the federal assistance grant, how did that come about? And the $300,000 in interest, yet we're still showing a loss. So I'm just a bit concerned about how we're still not showing as large a beneficial result of some of those revenue increases as I would have expected. So there must be something on the other side of the equation that's gone south, and what went south?
Shows you there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. So there's a couple of parts to that. Yes.
Through you, Mayor, in relation to the economic development, the community vision was originally going to be undertaken through the economic development area. So that's transitioned across to the strategy and performance reporting area. There was some work done in relation to acquiring a profile ID prescription, which was a lot of background statistical information associated with the Huon Valley.
Through you, Mayor, in relation to the other questions, the financial assistance grants, it's nothing we did, it's just the funding calculation applied by the state government who received their allocation from the feds. So we're just fortunate to get a larger allocation. In relation to why we're not showing a better result, notwithstanding those positive variances, as we've set out in the report in paragraph 20, there's also been a number of negative variances, and primarily they relate to the bringing forward of operating reserves from the prior year. So this is expenditure that didn't take place in previous years, even though it was budgeted to occur, and so it's been carried over into this year.
Okay, do I have any other questions? Yes, Councillor Gibson?
Just a small question. The $60,000 extra spent on planning, was that an extra staff member that we put on there, or
Through to you, Director.
something else? Through you, Mayor.
Look, I'd take advice from one of my colleagues, perhaps, but my understanding is that the payment of contractors because of the shortage of planning staff.
Yes, that's the answer to that. Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith?
Thank you. The user fees, there seems to be a variance of about 600,000. It's gone down. I just wondered what the reason for that was.
Through you, Mayor. So that's a decrease in forecast revenue primarily in childcare centres, but it's also offset by almost dollar for dollar in salary and wage costs, because with less children we need less staff.
Thank you. Yes, sorry.
Yes, Councillor
Just
Jessup.
a follow-up question to that. Is that indicating that we're losing customers, or is that a COVID effect? What do you think the effect is?
Again, I'm happy to take advice from my colleague, but my understanding is it was a fairly aggressive budget set for the current year in children's services, but not quite meeting that. So we're winding back the forecast for revenue and winding back the forecast for costs.
That's correct. So looking at how they developed their budgeting, there was some optimistic forecasting in terms of they hadn't considered vacancies across the year and the variances in terms of the vacation and after school care. So that's why we forecasted it down to consider that now. And in 23-24, we will be considering that going forward. So it's a learning that we're taking on board.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? No? All right. As we have no councillor speak against the motion, then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Draft Municipal Emergency Management Plan, agenda item 18.002/23. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Burgess. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Temby. Councillor Burgess, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do, Mayor. It's actually, I'd like to take the opportunity, if I could actually, to commend Beck Bell for the work that she's done on this report. It's a very comprehensive report. It's very important and detailed, and I believe she's done a really good job with it. And I'd like to thank the Mayor for being the chair, filled in my position as chair when I was away.
No problem.
And I'd like to also mention that I went to meet with the SES last night. I was lucky enough to be invited along, and as you know, there's probably the chances of an emergency happening that they would be in charge, and it was really good to see the quality of training that they do, the quality of the people they've got, and I was very impressed with the dedication to doing the way they go about their business. They're a very, very professional group, and I think we're so lucky to have people that volunteer their time and effort in such a wonderful thing as the local SES. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anyone to speak against the motion? No? Is there any questions? Anyone like to? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith.
Yeah, just two quick issues, and Councillor Burgess might be able to answer these. The stormwater systems is raised as a particular risk that they are undersized, and I wondered if we should be considering extending the stormwater levy and or the headworks stormwater charge on developments. And secondly, that we've noted the risk of there being insufficient safe areas in bushfires, and particularly in Crabtree, Mountain River and Grove, I note. Missed out again. And
So-
what's happening? Is there an action to, you know, mitigate these risks, I guess?
Okay, can I come through you to the...
So in terms of stormwater, it's obviously it's somewhat linked to the climate adaptation work that's going to happen, because that will also focus on what our existing infrastructure looks like and how it needs to be adapted to the changes in climate. And this is factored in there. You would have seen that climate change is one of those key risk areas that we looked at. In terms of those charges, it's something we are looking at, and it's work in progress. And similar with the safe areas, it's obviously an action we've committed to, or at least it's in the draft. So we will progress that as trying to address that as soon as possible.
And just to
Yep.
clarify something as well, is obviously any change to headworks charges or any other levies that we would take would need to be informed by evidence. So council does need to do work. We've had a stormwater management plan since 2019, I believe it was put in place, and we're now moving ahead on actually getting detailed designs done on those areas noted. That information will help us plan and coordinate better future development stormwater, but also identify current limitations in the existing network and what we need to do to upgrade those. So that'll all be used to inform what headworks, etc., we need to do, or indeed just what work council needs to do to improve what's already there. Exactly right. So, and you saw that when I presented the capital works and asset renewal program the other week. The allocations made to an increase in the investment made into stormwater modelling in particular. So modelling preceding the actual work, so that we have a program and can then start putting detailed capital works programs together based on evidence.
Through you to the director, there is an audit being conducted at present. Is that being? It's not completed, or is it completed?
So in terms of the audit, we've got a draft. So we've got we're reviewing that draft at the moment, and then once that those initial comments have been included, then it will be circulated for consideration.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Temby.
So in the background, human resources and financial implications, number 17 and 18. It speaks that council has the opportunity to apply for federal funding for risk reduction activities.
Yep.
And that municipal emergency management plans incorporating prevention, preparedness, response and recovery can, sort of basically working with neighbouring councils and regional committees, but also bringing it back to the community level as well. Is there any plans to actually apply for this federal funding for risk reduction activities?
We can go through the director for that one. Yes.
So yes, that draft, the draft audit that we're doing on emergency management and recovery has covering that in terms of those opportunities and how we access them. But it's also looking internally around our current resourcing and what amendments we need to make to that to better service this, and to then give us the scope and the ability and the space to then apply for those grants. But yes, the intention is there. The other thing to note is that there's obviously a potential legislation change that's coming in the future. We don't know yet when, but that will have implications around where the different roles and responsibilities sit. Potentially those might go to the merged TFS and SES body rather than sitting with council. So there's going to be a bit of change in this space going forward. But yes, the intention in the interim is to apply for those funds.
And we do work with Kingborough at the moment. We have someone from Kingborough sits on our with Councillor Burgess. Yes?
Just wondering whether, like, it also mentions there's a number of community groups, sporting clubs and service organisations in the area with volunteers that can be called upon to assist in an emergency. Has that been formalised? And is there any way that, for example, because I know that an emergency might happen sooner rather than later, is there something that we can do even before we get funding, just from a councillor perspective, for example, to liaise with local sporting groups and community groups to actually start to engage in the conversation about emergency management plans in different areas throughout the Huon Valley?
I was, just to answer on my participation, I participated in the audit as being mayor, and we spoke about what has worked and what didn't work in when we had the fires and different areas. And I think that will, in the draft, come out, Kathy, for us to be able to move forward with that. But I'll pass that over to the acting director just to confirm that, yeah.
Thinking back to the bushfires, as the mayor has said, there were things that worked, there were things that weren't, and we obviously are taking learnings from that. But I go back to, we need to make sure we are resourcing this effectively and correctly to allow us to undertake that engagement and formalise those agreements. There are some in place, but there could be more. So again, yes, the audit recommendations will certainly cover on that. So yeah, we look forward to getting that final report and then actioning those recommendations.
Thank you. Do we have any other? Okay, as there's no one to speak against the motion, then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. It's that time again to advise that council is about to go into closed council. Thank you to all those people who joined our gallery tonight and those that have stayed to the end, and those of you who took the time to watch the meeting online this evening. Thank you, guys. The next meeting of the ordinary meeting of council is on Wednesday, the 26th of April. The recommendation 19.011/23 is that the meeting now be closed to the public as at pursuant to Regulation 15 of the Meeting Procedures Regulations to discuss the following matters. Do I have to read them out? No.
No, you don't have to read them out, Mayor. Just to include the tender item as well that was...
Yes. We have the urgent matter that we had with the medical centre at Dover. So, okay. So, I put the motion. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, yes. Moved, yep. Moved by Councillor Jessup, seconded by Councillor... Yep, Jenny Campbell-Smith. Councillor Jessup, do you wish to?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Okay, anyone speaking against the motion? So I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. And the motion is carried. In accordance with Huon Valley Council audio recording of council meeting policy, recording of the open session of the meeting ceased at 8:34. I adjourn the meeting for a short refreshment break as at 8:34.